Thanks very much, everybody. It's a real honour to be here. There's some really, really incredible people here. I have to say I'm a little nervous. I'm going to talk to you today about some illegal activities, and more specifically, illegal activities that I've been involved in personally. Now, when I agreed to do this, I didn't know the Chief of Police would be in the room and high-ranking members of the Homeland Security Department. So, but bear with me. Don't tase me, guys. I got a point here, okay? So my name's Matt Mason. I'm the author of a book coming out in January called The Pirate's Dilemma. And what my book deals with is a subject that really we've all been talking about today, and that's that lots and lots of different rules all over society, meaningless because things are working in very, very different ways. Information used to flow in a very one-way direction, all types of information. You know, you had producers and consumers and broadcasters and viewers and listeners, but now it's very much a two-way street. And this is leading to all kinds of decentralization and democratization of lots of different things and causing lots of problems. And to sort of explore these ideas, I looked at the histories of different youth cultures and music scenes in my book, because there are lots of situations where people really experimented with things in spaces where rules didn't apply, in music and different subcultures, and actually things worked out really well. So, for example, I look at the history of the remix to tell the story of how important customization and collaboration is in business settings today. Or I look at how graffiti evolved and survived in New York City, and what advertisers who are trying to talk to us, even though we're tuning them out all the time, what they can learn from that. But obviously one of the main topics in my book is piracy. Yeah, there he is, my pirate. And this is something that lots of people are concerned about, because pirates do cause an awful lot of problems. But I believe that pirates also create a lot of solutions. And these are actually probably one of the most outstanding groups of innovators on the planet. And what I'm going to talk to you today is how I arrived at this conclusion, because it is a very personal story in the spirit of BIF, and it's not one that I've told before. So I grew up here in London, obsessed with music as a kid, specifically the music coming out of all the different pirate radio stations that kind of are dotted all over the city. Now, lots of people outside of London don't know too much about pirate radio, so I'm just going to explain what it is quite quickly. People have turntables in their bedrooms or next to the kitchen sink, or in some cases on a wobbly ironing board in their living room, connected to homemade transmitters on the roofs of tower blocks. And they play all kinds of music to the city, and it's completely unregulated, it's completely illegal. And I loved it. And I was a good kid, I didn't get in lots of trouble at school, or, you know, I wasn't really much of a handful, but as soon as I could, I had to become a pirate radio DJ. So I spent lots of my weekends at the top of really tall tower blocks like this, DJing in people's apartments and broadcasting to the whole of London. And really, really loved it, and really loved this space where people could really innovate and play whatever they wanted. And even today, these are some of the tower blocks I used to play on a station called Ice FM in West London. There's still, I think it's 150 at the last count this year, 150 pirate stations across the UK. Most of them are in London. And these pirates, actually, something like 10% of the entire London radio audience is tuning into these pirates. And it is illegal, but it is tolerated, because it's widely recognised that what these pirates are doing is actually providing the music industry with some really, really valuable innovations. So it works a bit like this. You have the London radio market, it's this big space, and you've got two sort of big commercial stations in that space playing music to young audiences. And these work like radio stations all over the world. They're multi-million-pound enterprises, they're profit-driven, lots of commercial pressure, which means what it means at every big commercial radio station, the same Britney Spears song 20 times a day. And then you have the pirates, and they're kind of over here in this different space. And they're not regulated in the same way. And actually the most popular pirates tend to be the ones that are the most experimental. So this is when new music happens, and new ideas in music, and new scenes are really created. And those scenes then sort of trickle up into the mainstream and international charts. So it's really this really cool process. And also lots of the DJs on the pirates, the really popular ones, go on to play on the big stations, and they're hired by the BBC and all kinds of other people. So I grew up just obsessed with this relationship between the underground and the mainstream that exists in London. And by night I was a pirate, and by day I worked at one of the major record labels, and then I got into advertising. And I found myself at a big media company working on magazines, in the magazine business, which is how I came to be approached about a new title starting up called Rewind. And I was approached by the guys that started it to become the editor-in-chief. And it was a weird proposition. These 4 guys approached me. They had absolutely no experience in the magazine business. The salary that they were offering to pay me was going to be paid in cash when they could, and it was terrible. And the offices were in the dingy back room of a record shop in South London. So the package wasn't great. But Rewind was a music magazine, and it was about all the cutting-edge music on the Pirates, which obviously appealed to me. But the thing that really appealed to me was that Rewind was a pirate itself. It acted like a pirate. It took this mentality on board. So here was like the magazine market, our competitors as they existed back in 2001. And as you can see, it's quite a cluttered marketplace. And on top of this, it was really, really contracting. Kids were getting their information about music online, so the magazines were starting to matter less and less, and they were closing. It really wasn't a great time to be starting a magazine. But we didn't want to be in this space. We wanted to be over here. We wanted to be where our audience was, and they weren't spending their money on magazines. They were spending it on clothes and sneakers and still music in 2001. So we gave our magazine away for free, but only in the coolest sneaker shops and clothing shops and record shops. And this meant we had a really, really targeted audience, and we could charge a premium for advertising. And this model worked really well for us. Thinking Like the Pirates worked really well for Rewind, and we went from 5,000 copies to 30,000 copies, and today it still is one of the largest music magazines in the UK, something which I'm really, really proud of. Prince Charles recognised this achievement in 2004, and he gave us the London Business of the Year award. That same year, Gordon Brown asked us to get involved in his campaign, helping more kids under 25 start their own businesses. And it was really great. We made a lot of money, and it was really, really an amazing experience. And that's when I started to get bored, because we really grew. It was like 15 full-time members of staff and big new shiny offices, and which is all great, but we no longer felt like a pirate, and I was getting restless and thinking about my next move. And then something really, really unexpected happened to me. I met a girl. Her name was Emily. She was amazing. I fell in love with her, and about a year later, we got married. She's here with me today. She's over there somewhere. Oh, there she is. Hi, sweetie. But there was a problem. Emily lived in New York. So when we got married, I was the restless one, so I moved over. And this presented me with a new set of problems. Because when you move over here and marry an American citizen, you can't work for 3 months while your green card's coming through, and you can't leave the country. So I was just sitting there kind of plotting what I was going to do next and thinking about this connection between the underground and the mainstream and what I was going to sort of do with that, and maybe I was going to write a book about it or something. I couldn't decide. And then something else crazy happened. I opened the paper one morning, and there was a story. It was summer 2005. There was a story about a famine in Niger and Mali, and it was like 4 million people were starving, and it kind of really got to me. It was, one of those things where you're like, I have to do something about this. And I had all this time, so I started volunteering for an organisation called Action Against Hunger, a really, really cool non-profit that were working in the area and helping alleviate the situation. And they needed somebody in their New York office to call the news networks over here and try and get more camera crews on the ground over in Niger and Mali so that there was more awareness and more donations. So I began calling the networks, like, can you send a team out? Can you cover this story? And they all were saying no, and they were all giving us the same excuses. International stories don't get the ratings, our budgets have been cut, we're really sorry, we can't do it. I think my favourite excuse was, we're covering a really important car chase in Tennessee this week, which was, kind of disheartening. And I realised I was back in this same space. Here was Action Against Hunger down here, and what it needed from the media. And here's the mainstream media, and it worked very much like the mainstream radio stations in London. They have to play the same Britney Spears record all day. The mainstream media here is really under pressure to run the same Britney Spears news story all day. But they all kept saying something quite interesting to me. They all kept saying, well, if you guys have got any footage or you've got anybody on the ground, then, we'd love to show it. We know it's an important story. And this seemed like our only hope, and I was desperate. So I didn't know any camera people or anybody on the ground, so I just sent an email to, everybody in my inbox. Anybody know a camera person with their own equipment who can go to Niger and Mali next week? I can't pay you. We can just about cover your airfare, and when you come back, we need everything you shoot. So yeah, not a great package. So I didn't think I'd hear anything. And 2 days later, this email had gone all over the world, and I'd heard from 30 professional camera people on 3 continents, 2 of whom had been nominated for Emmys. And this kind of blew my mind. And they were all saying the same thing. We don't get to do these stories anymore. We don't get to do these really important things, and we want to. And so that was great. We got a team together. We sent them out there. The footage aired on Fox, CNN, the BBC took it, AP took it, Reuters took it. This story was broadcast around the world. Donations spiked to Action Against Hunger that year by $1.1 million, largely because of this PR exercise that we did. And that was obviously amazing, but the thing that really blew my mind was what was going on in this space. You have all these media volunteers who, to me, looked exactly the same as all the pirate radio DJs. Like, we used to volunteer as pirate radio DJs because we were passionate about getting underexposed music and new music into the media. And that's what all these volunteers wanted to do. And you didn't just have Action Against Hunger in this space. You had thousands of non-profits all over the world who all need media exposure and all can support people on the ground with logistics like security and food and accommodation, the same way a pirate radio station owner can support his DJs with a wobbly ironing board with turntables on it. And me and Emily kept talking and talking. How can we bring these 2 people together? How can we kind of realize the potential in this space and create this kind of new media platform? And that's exactly what we did about a year ago. We founded an organization called Wedia. And over the last year, Wedia has sent teams all over the world and worked with lots of different non-profits and pulled together some really, really important media stories and really had a great first year. We're currently working with a really great team of web developers as well to make this connection happen in a kind of social space online, and that'll all be rolling out over the next few months, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, I mean, I've been kind of in this weird space all my life, obsessed with spaces outside of markets where the market won't go, but pirates will. And I began looking around and thinking about this more and more, and I realized it's happening everywhere. I mean, the most obvious example is obviously the music industry, which has been dogged by piracy for nearly a decade now, but refused to monetize, you know, Napster and Kazaa and all the torrent sites and what they were doing. Even though, as Steve Jobs once put it, the best way to fight piracy is to actually compete with it. And that's exactly what he did, and he created iTunes, and obviously it was very successful. Same thing in the film industry. You've got any film, the day it's released, you can get it on DVD. Sometimes you can download it a couple of days before it's released. And Hollywood's not really interested in entertaining the idea of releasing stuff simultaneously across all formats, even though, as Mark Cuban, who's speaking tomorrow, once put it, people are consuming films how they want them, when they want them, where they want them. And so it's no coincidence that it was Mr. Cuban who experimented with Steven Soderbergh's film Bubble in 2006, releasing it on HDTV download and in the cinemas and on DVD as well. But it's not just downloadable stuff that piracy is kind of changing the situation in. It's also the pharmaceutical industry, which has been dogged by piracy and people making illegal generic versions of their pills for years and years and years. And in countries like India, I mean, these pill pirates are literally saving lives of people who couldn't afford to pay Western prices for malaria drugs and AIDS drugs. And so India turned a blind eye to what these pill pirates were doing for a really long time. And that actually put a lot of pressure on the Western drug companies to lower their prices there. And it's one of the reasons that life expectancy went up in India from, I think it's 40 in 1970 to 64 years today. So, I mean, what pirates actually do is they're really at the sharp end of innovation. And when they exist outside markets like this, and they do something that's good, people support them. And they grow in numbers, and they kind of invade the market space, and they create a debate about what's right and what's wrong and what we should be doing. And usually our response is to throw lawsuits at these pirates and hope they'll go away. And sometimes that is the best thing to do, because sometimes piracy is wrong and it's just stealing, and that's fine. But what if it's not? What if these pirates are actually onto something? And when they come into these spaces, they're doing something better for all of us. Well, in those situations, it doesn't matter how many lawsuits you throw at them, they keep coming back, and they will keep coming back. And the truth is that if a core component of your business model is throwing lawsuits at people, then you don't really have a very good business model anymore, unless you're a lawyer. So the best thing to do in these situations is to compete with pirates, because what they've actually done is created a new market space, and they're kind of highlighting how we could be doing things better. And so the best thing to do then is to compete with them. And as legitimate companies move into these spaces, they legitimize what the pirates are doing, and actually create more opportunities for everybody. This is actually how the record industry was started in the first place. It's how Hollywood was founded, and it's how loads and loads and loads of opportunities are happening today. So I really believe that pirates are really great at innovation, and they kind of present us with a choice when they come into markets like this. We can either fight them in the courts, or we can match them play for play in the market. To compete or not to compete, that is the question. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the pirate's dilemma. Thank you very much.